Hello, I'm James Barth, and today we're going to talk about our XJ rear bumper. Our XJ rear bumper is probably the strongest bumper you can find for the rear of your XJ, because not only do we tie into the original subframe where the original bumpers mount, but we also tie into the trailer hitch mounting and incorporate all this together into one piece. Now, this bumper features a 2-inch receiver with the safety chains mounts. Has 1-inch D-rings that come all the way through this 2x4 tubing. The strength of this bumper is in the tubing along with the bracing that comes in off of the hitch mount. Now, we have a couple different versions on the outside here for different flares. We make these available for your factory. We make them available for the Notch custom flares or the Bushwhacker pocket and or flat flares. Now, we'll get into it and we'll show you here a little bit later on in the video a dimension here so you can check to make sure that's going to work with the flares that you have. If you have something different than that, we recommend that you buy the standard bumper and then notch or custom cut this to your flare. Now, let's talk a little bit about the strength of this bumper. This bumper is made primarily out of 1/4-inch material, which means that the bracketry here for the hitch, the mounting, and the side wings are all made out of 1/4-inch material, which makes this extremely strong. This is a 2x4 tubing that we've cut and put a receiver hitch into it and then put a brace across the bottom. Now, we've had some people that have asked over the time as we put and we weld this, if we were to actually weld this all the way across, we would get a little bit extra warpage. So that is stitch weld. So some customers ask about that, but that's the reason why. This gives you some taper protection. This bumper, as you will see once it's installed, is tucked nicely and tight up against the vehicle to get you that ground clearance that you're needing on your departure angles. Let's go ahead and start the install of this bumper. Now we're going to go ahead and start with the removal of the factory bumper. We're going to use a 10mm and remove the wings on each side. We'll use a wrench on the top side with a socket on the bottom, and then a 16mm to remove these center bolts. Let's go ahead and start doing that. Now that we went ahead and removed the lower bolts, I went ahead and removed the nuts off the upper mount of the bumper too. That is done from the top inside. Now we're going to go ahead and remove these 4 bolts here that are going to go into the factory subframe. And if you have a factory trailer hitch, we're going to go ahead and remove that here at this time also. Now we're using a 15mm socket. We're removing the 4 bolts on these brackets on both sides of the vehicle. If you had a trailer hitch installed factory, you would have to also remove this exhaust hanger. We're going to do that with a 1/2 inch. Go ahead and remove the bolts that hold the exhaust hanger in place, because our rail is going to go down this frame rail that braces it. These brackets come with the rear bumper whether you're getting it with or without the tire carry option. These brackets go inside the frame rail, as we'll show you in a second. To figure out which side is left and right, go ahead and line them up with the notch openings here on these brackets going forward. You'll see that this one here goes towards the driver's side and the other one towards the passenger side because it matches up with these bolts here. Now you're going to take these brackets here and you're going to slide them inside the frame rail, bring it at a little bit of an angle, and slide this forward until you line up with the bolt holes on the bottom. This will allow you to put the bolts from the bottom going up and have nuts inside the frame. Go ahead and repeat for the passenger side. I want to talk to you about one modification that is needed to the rear of your Jeep to install this bumper. This is a very simple thing to do, so I don't want you to be afraid of it, but I want to talk to you about it. If you notice how I build this bracket, I wanted this tied together with the trailer hitch area into this lower portion of the bumper and into the bracket here all the way on the top. Okay, so with that comes a problem right here in this lower bracket. And you can see how this piece of metal here, when you go to install it, is going to interfere with the body in a little area. And I'm going to show you what we do to the body to make room for that piece. Okay, on each side, you're going to need to slot it right here. Now, some guys have done it with a pair of tin snips. I actually did it with a rotary grinder and just cut a slot on each side. To get an idea where it needs to be, it lines up with the edge of this oval opening, and it needs to be about a 1/2 inch wide, just to give you a little bit of clearance in case you're off. We're going to go ahead and open the rear deck lid as the bumper comes up pretty close. Now, it is kind of a 2-man job sometimes to install this bumper. We're going to go ahead and slide it in on the frame here, and go ahead and start the bolts here, here, and going down the frame rail. I'm going to start a bolt going up from the bottom, which will help hold the bumper in place on each side. We're going to go ahead and do that now. When installing the bumper, we're going to go ahead and put some blue tape on here so that we don't scratch the bumper. If you're a little off side to side, or if your Jeep's been tweaked quite a bit, sometimes you'll get it real close to the body here, and we're going to go ahead and put some tape there so that we don't make a mark. Now we're going to go ahead and take the 4 factory bolts that we took off of those brackets that went into the rear of your Jeep that held the factory bumper on, and we're going to use the bolts that are provided to go down the frame rail on each side. These bolts are a 7/16 bolts that will take a 5/8 socket, and we'll use a 15 millimeter to install these. Now we've went ahead and started and tightened the 4 bolts on the back, and we've started all the bolts going down the frame rail. We've used a 15 millimeter wrench with a short socket and a swivel to do the upper bolts, and we used just a regular 15 millimeter socket on the lower. We were able to do the lowers from below and the uppers from above. Now, something that does make it a little bit of a simple tip is to have a flex ratchet. That'll allow you to get in there at a little bit of an angle. Now we're going to go ahead and tighten the bolts going down the frame rail on each side and reinstall the exhaust hanger. When we were installing this bumper, we did run into a slight bit of an issue. And the issue was we were having a hard time bringing it a little bit side to side. What we didn't realize is where we slotted the body to allow for that bracket like we talked about earlier, from where it comes from the trailer hitch to the bumper, we didn't make it quite large enough. So we went ahead and opened that up a little bit, allowed us to shift the bumper slightly sideways to get the bolts in easier. When installing the exhaust hanger back in place, our exhaust on this Jeep is the factory, as this Jeep has only 6,000 original miles on it. It's been garaged all of its life. We actually had to drill another hole and only use 1 hole on the hanger to put it to mount it in place. So we went ahead and just held the rubber together, drilled another hole, and now we're going to go ahead and install the 1 factory bolt back in place. Depending on the style of hanger and depending on the year of your Jeep, you may be able to get 2 of the factory bolts back in place, but 1 will do without a problem. We're going to go ahead and tighten that up with a 13 millimeter wrench. Now that all bolts are in place, go ahead and tighten everything down. Wanted to go over a couple things with the bumper here. Between the old style XJs and the newer style XJs, and how you tell the difference, if you're not for sure, is the hinges are exposed on the older style XJs. That'll tell you which model you have. We have seen some variances in the taillights on these XJs, and not necessarily, I shouldn't say in the taillight, but how they're mounted. We have had to have once in a while a customer where they'll have to take the bolts out of their taillights and slightly move them up just a little bit for a little extra clearance. So the taillights are varying on the Jeeps, and the Jeeps have varied a little bit through the years that the XJ was made. But this bumper goes on really nice with the factory mounting holes on the back, and then the holes going down the subframe where we install our plates inside the rear cross member if you don't have the factory trailer hitch. Now, this bumper is made of 2x4 material, 3/16 wall tubing on both sides with the receiver hitch and the D-rings going all the way through. It has the 1/4-inch plate here on the bottom and 1/4-inch wings that we call going forward. This makes this bumper extremely solid for the rear of your XJ. Now, on the side plates, these wings that we call them going forward, we make a couple different versions. This particular one is for the notch customs. We make them for the pocket flares of Bushwhacker and also the flats. Whichever ones you have, let us know. If you have something different or something odd, we recommend that you buy our standard bumper that has the wings that come clear forward. That way you can angle them and cut them to what you need for your desired flares that you have on your Jeep. Now, talk a little bit about this. Because we've tied it together with the function of the trailer hitch and the bumper together, we have superior strength in the actual trailer hitch itself. You have to remember that you are on a unibody construction vehicle, this making probably the bumper stronger than the actual Jeep it is, but we have tied it all together to get you superior amount of strength that we can in this vehicle. This particular one is one of our no post. So this is not designed with our tire carrier, but if you buy the one with our tire carrier, it has a block here that has the bearings and hub assemblies, and it will install just like our other vehicles, just like the TJ or the JK or the JL as far as the assembly of the swing. So that you can look as far as, if you have a question on as far as how to install the tire carrier, all that'll be the same. The only difference is when you install the striker plate, that will be here on a separate plate that comes on the back side of this bumper. Very self-explanatory. If you have any questions, please call us, but those videos will explain how to install the tire carrier option. When you do install the tire carrier option, one thing that is going to be needed is your factory license plate here will need to be relocated to the center of the spare. That we have in a kit. We have it in a kit available with and without a light for your license plate and with an extra third brake light in it. So we have all the things you're needing to build your XJ. Here's our rear bumper. We wanted to show you that here today. Through your hardware pack and locate the washers and these two thick spacers. Now, what these are designed for is these washers set the height of the swing. Okay? So what you're going to do is, depending on the size of tire and if you're running can mounts or baskets, if you're running a stock size tire, most of the time you're going to start off with 3 shims, 2 to 3 shims. If you're running the stock size tire and baskets and can mounts, you're normally going to start off with about 4 shims, sometimes 5. If you're running up to a 38-inch tire with the can mounts and the racks, you're going to be around 5, 6 shims. And what this does is you're going to set these shims on the post here, okay? And then you're going to take one thick spacer and set this on the post. And that thick spacer is actually going to go up in the grease seal of the hub. What you're doing with these here is we're setting the height of the swing. And so what we do is we want it so that the swing, when it's fully mounted, so that it catches into the latch in the right area, and it also makes it so you don't have to really lift your tire carrier up when you're closing it. Now we're going to go ahead and set this assembly on the rear bumper. Now we're going to go ahead and push the large spacer down in the hub assembly. Now, if you'll be able to take a look right here, you'll see how that large spacer just sits right outside of the grease seal. Make sure that the bottom spacer went all the way up in the hub assembly also. It should look just like the top. Now we're going to go ahead and take our extra shims and put them on the top just in case we ever need them for adjustment. And we're going to go ahead and install the aluminum nut on the top of the post. Now you're going to want to go ahead and tighten this down fairly snug. You want to make sure that those bearings are compressed. What I normally do is take a big crescent wrench to do that. Now I want you to get your hardware kits and find a couple parts. One is the rock hard 4x4 handle, 2 of the smaller nuts that are in the hardware pack, along with the button head Allen screws. There'll be 2 each of those. There's going to be 3 5/16 bolts, a nut plate, the latch, and 3 washers. Next, I want you to take the latch and the handle. Latch and handle go this way. So the latch is facing this direction. I want you to put the handle on the latch like this. I want you to put the button head bolts through the back, this side, with the nut towards the center of the latch. Go ahead and tighten these screws using a 4mm Allen wrench and a 7/16. I want you to locate the nut plate. You'll see how there's 3 holes in the nut plate. Now they're not lined up, but they do match the holes in the latch. What you're going to do is you're going to take this nut plate, you're going to slide it in until they line up with the bolt holes down below. Take the latch, slide the handle of the latch through the opening slot in the bumper, and bolt that up through the bottom of the swing arm into that nut plate. Now use a 1/2 inch in wrench or 1/2 inch socket and tighten these bolts down. Now, I want you to just snug them up. They don't have to be over tightened, as you don't want to squish the latch. Now that the striker is just loose and you've installed the latch, I want you to go ahead and shut the rear tire carrier and then go ahead and open it real lightly so that you don't move the striker, and use your Torx T50 and go ahead and tighten your striker down in place. This centers the striker in the latch. Next, I want you to go through your hardware, locate the rubber bumper, the Allen head bolt, and a nut. What you're going to do is you're going to put the bolt through the rubber, install it in here, put the nut on the back side. You're going to use a 3/16 Allen and a 1/2 inch in wrench, and go ahead and tighten those down in place. Okay, this latch is just like a door latch of a car. You have a single click and you have a double click, just the same as on a car door. So what I want you to make sure is, when you close it and you squished into this rubber, I want to make sure it's going to the second stage of that latch. And then go ahead and feel around on the back side here, and you can see that that latch is going to the second stage. You can see how this latch right here is parallel with the swing arm. That means that it's closed to the second stage. Go ahead and locate the swing arm end cap. Go ahead and place it over the handle like this. Take a rubber mallet or a hammer and a piece of wood and go ahead and tap this in place. I want to talk a little bit about this hard plastic block here and the height of the swing arm. Now, you can see how this hard plastic block has been machined to put a radius on it so this arm will slide up on it. What I want is, with the tire carrier on it and your racks or however you're going to set your particular bumper up with accessories, when you close the swing arm, I want it to just touch it here and jump up on it. Now, on this particular build, we are going to be installing the racks, the can mounts, and the spare tire. So we're going to set it without a tire and carrier on it, just so it's right above it, so that the weight of the can mounts and the carrier and everything will make it so it contacts the block about right here, so that when you close it, if you just close it just like with a little bit of uplift but not much, you'll be able to go right on top of this block. Then it'll be nice and secure and solid. One thing I want to make sure that we do is we'll go ahead and install the grease erk. Now this grease erk screws into the hub assembly right here. Now, one thing to remember is, what we're trying to do with this grease erk is we're trying to fill this hub completely full of grease. What we want to do is we want to keep the moisture out of this. You'll notice that the rock hard 4x4 cap comes over the top of the hub assembly to just as a shield to keep moisture out. You want to make sure that when you fill it full of grease, that you actually get grease out of the bottom grease seal. What I normally do is I fill it up until I get grease out of the bottom seal. Then I go ahead and remove the grease erk. That removes any air pressure in there, and go ahead and put it back in, put a couple more pumps off the grease gun. This way you've really filled that whole hub assembly with grease. You'll keep the moisture out. Those bearings will last forever. You know, every once in a while it's good to put a couple squirts of grease into there with a grease gun. It's not something you have to do all the time. You'll notice sometime that you will get a little grease out of the bottom. On a really hot day, when you pressure wash your Jeep, it'll go right away. This is our new design rear tire carrier. Now I want you to go ahead and find this piece here. This is the height adjustment for the tire carrier. What you're going to do is put it in place here, put the bolts with a washer on it, a lock washer, and the nut on each side, this side. Now, what I want to talk to you about on it is there's adjustments as far as heights. Okay? And so what you have is you have different holes here for different heights. If you're running a 37, 38-inch tire, you're going to put it pretty much all the way to the top. If you're running a 35, you'll be at the next hole down, a 33 or 31 down from there. And you could lower it all the way here if you want it closer to the ground. Now, something to keep in mind, if you do lower it all the way down, you have to watch, make sure you do still clear for your trailer hitch, and to make sure you're not getting in the way of your departure angle. That's why we made it adjustable, so you can put it the way you want it. Now we're going to use a 5/8 and an 11/16 and go ahead and tighten these down in place. Now we're going to grab the tire adapter. This adapter goes on here and matches up with the curvature of the other plate. So what you're going to do now is decide how far you want this in and out. And this might take a trial and error, but we're going to go ahead and set this about right here for the tire and wheel that we're putting on this Jeep. Now I want to show you something, make it a little easier for you. A lot of people ask, how do I know what stud area to put it in? What you're going to do is you're going to set it down into your wheel, line the holes up that line up, and go ahead and drop the studs down in place. This way you'll know where to pull the studs through the tire adapter. Now, the Rockhard 4x4 tire adapter has all different patterns in it. Whether you have aftermarket axles in your TJ or you have a JK bolt pattern or whatever you may have, the Rockhard 4x4 tire carrier adapter works. Now that we've located where the studs go, we're going to go ahead and mount our tire adapter to the tire carrier height adjustment. We're going to go ahead and drop the bolts down through. We'll install the nuts with lock washers on the back side. Go ahead and tighten those down using your 5/8 and 11/16 wrenches. Now we're going to go ahead and pull the studs through the tire carrier adapter. We're going to use the studs that come in the hardware kit, and then I always use like an extra big washer or a big bolt that goes over. And then like just a standard nut that you may have for your tire. One thing you need to pay attention to is when you pull them through, the reason we use a big nut or a washer on the back side is there's these knurls that go through this plate. And these knurls that go through this plate, and they're going to come through the plate and stick through, but we want the stud to seat all the way against the back of the tire adapter, so that's why we put the washer on there. You're going to push these through. We're going to go ahead and tighten these down. Now, we don't recommend using an impact on this. Go ahead and use like a tire iron or a ratchet and go ahead and tighten them down to pull the studs through. As you can see, as we tighten this down, it's pulling the stud right into the back of that plate. Repeat this for the other studs.